and welcome to Raised by Horror. Raised by Horror is an inclusive podcast for grown-up latchkey kids of all genders and all orientations whose proxy parenting was done by horror films and books. We are your hosts, Richard Kadri and Violet Blue. Check out raisedbyhorror.com for more info. In this episode, we're talking about HBO series The Penguin, the new J.T. Molnar film Strange Darling, what we're reading, and upcoming titles that intrigue us. We want to warn you before we begin that we're not holding back and there will be spoilers for The Penguin and Strange Darling. So if you haven't seen either, hit pause and come back later, especially with Penguin and Strange Darling. So, hello Richard. Hi.
Hello. All
Hi.
right.
I'm taking over for this first segment. I hope that's okay.
Absolutely. You run with Penguin.
I really want to. Okay, yeah. We have to start with The Penguin, because you and I both watched the series and we've both been pretty blown away by it. And I feel like we have some processing to do.
Yes.
Because okay, so I'm of two minds about it, right? And I think you're the same way. Where on one hand I'm like, the fuck did I just see? Like amazing art and everything, but also it just emotionally hits you like a ton of bricks, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I was shocked that a DC show could ever pull up that depth of emotion.
Right? Okay. I have some. I was taking a look at what critics were saying about it, so I have to read what some of the critics said about it first before we get like really into it here.
Great.
So, IGN said Matt Reeves taking a character full of opportunity for fan service and creating something both familiar and unique that the audience didn't know they wanted. So, indeed, right? AV
Absolutely.
Forums called it rich, dark, and crime infested. Latino Review Media called it a well-written, harrowing, and dark show about the rise of a true villain. And it's their pick for the best TV series of 2024. NPR also called it one of 2024's best shows. Screen Rant called it a towering, formidable, shocking, provocative success. The Daily Athenaeum said, every storyline is so well written that you almost forget this is the Batman universe. While many have drawn comparisons to HBO's The Sopranos, this work is able to stand on its own. And I think that's interesting because a lot of the reviews I read reference The Sopranos.
I suppose I can see the connection, but in a very kind of like, oh, they're both crime stories kind of way. I don't think it's a very deep kind of comparison. It seems kind of almost trite to me because they're
Yeah,
very different stories, and it's like feels like people reaching for some
I
comparison.
I agree. I mean, it's probably partly that people miss The Sopranos and they really loved it,
Yeah,
but I think that it's a very different work that stands out on its own, like completely. All
because
right, so The
Oz,
Penguin.
the
Oh,
Penguin,
yeah.
because I
All
think
right, The Penguin. Go
I
ahead.
mean, I think The Sopranos comparison falls apart just with Oz versus Tony Soprano. Because Tony Soprano is at heart a person, whereas
Ooh.
Oz is not.
Ooh.
Oz
Wow.
is a giant black
Okay.
hole of need and fury.
Oh my God. Okay, and I know exactly why you're saying that.
Okay.
Wow. Okay, so The Penguin, right? Like, it's weird that I would be interested in a show about the Penguin. I don't pursue Batman shows per se, although I did love Gotham, the baby Batman show. I thought that was fantastic. This Penguin, HBO's The Penguin, it's basically like a pocket dimension version of the Batman universe. It's what happens right after the Batman, the 2022 film. In it, basically, it's about a mid-level gangster, but it's centered on a female crime boss. And it takes place 1 week after the Riddler blew up Gotham's seawall retainer and Carmine Falcone was killed. So it's basically taking that Batman film from 2022, and this is just boom, 1 week later. So you saw the Batman, right? the Batman film?
Yes, I did. I think I liked it more than you did. I liked it because it was, for me, it was a crime movie, not a superhero movie. It felt very grimy and dirty, and a film in which every single character is compromised in some way. So it felt like an old 50s, not quite Jim Thompson kind of novel, but closing in on that, where like there are no real good guys. Certainly Batman in that movie is not a good guy.
Yeah. It's every character is flawed and dark and fucked up. But yeah, I mean, I will admit, like, that film did not gel with me. So seeing the Penguin, I ended up loving the Penguin so much that I went back and rewatched the Batman, 2022's The Batman, because I just was like, I just didn't remember that much of the film. I also wanted to go back and see Colin Farrell's, like, all the scenes of the Penguin to try and piece together this character, because it's such a messy fucking character.
Yeah.
So it's Oz Cobb, which they're taking Oswald Cobblepot and basically shortening the name, which is much more realistic and it fits that world so much better. He's the former chief lieutenant of dead crime boss Carmine Falcone. And it's basically like Oz Cobb's clawing his way into power story, essentially. He's needy, he's compulsive, he's clumsy, he's grotesque. It's Colin Farrell's like super heavily made up 3 hours of prosthetics Oz Cobb. And it's, I mean, you can read a million things about like how wild his transformation is and how unrecognizable he is, which is just absolutely part of the entire entertainment of this show for sure. But yeah, it definitely takes that bit from the Batman where it's like everything is gross and everything is dirty and everything is grimy and gritty, and kind of like really just kind of teases it out, I think, in a way that I liked it so much more than the movie. And I felt that the Penguin, which I'll explain why in a second, which is why I insisted on us talking about the Penguin for our horror podcast. I feel it's crime horror. Like,
Absolutely.
I feel like it's a horror show just as much as it's a crime show. And it's not a superhero show at all. Like, not really. So it's surprising for so many reasons, and those are a couple of the really big ones.
I agree on all of those points. Oz is
Okay.
definitely a horror character.
Right? Yeah. And this show also, we'll get to it in a second, but like this is I was thinking about it, and they made Arkham Asylum horror. They made it scary, and it was the Arkham Asylum I remember reading in the Frank Miller graphic novels, right?
Yes.
Like that's the Arkham that terrified me when I was reading comic books way back then. Those comic books. I still read comic books, but you know what I mean. But yeah, that was how I envisioned it. Like, it just absolute horror show, terrifying.
Yeah.
So episode 1 is it's super dense. It's really packed. I'm going to go over the episodes just a little bit so we can just talk about the scenes and what happened with the show. And it's just some of the episodes in particular are just so packed with so much stuff going on that's really interesting that it takes a bit of setup. And a lot of the setup is in the first episode, where it's basically it opens. Okay, so it opens basically on Penguin looking at the city, and the city has just been flooded. Gotham, it's basically kind of a stand-in for New York. And the Riddler has just blown up the seawall, and so a ton of the city has been flooded. It's all the poor areas that have been flooded, which is a really big, interesting piece of commentary that's through the whole show about the haves and the have-nots and the class distinctions about what's happening here. And it's interesting, I was reading, there's a crane shot in the beginning that's above the city and then goes down underneath bridges and things like that, and we never come back out. We never and this is all in the very beginning of the show, like you go basically under bridges and inside of things, and you never see an open sky. Like, you never do. It's all under things, it's in shadows, and everything is wet. Like, I noticed that every single episode, every exterior shot, it's wet. Everything is still soaking wet from the floods. It's wild. But it opens up on the shot of Penguin in silhouette looking at the bridge, and it looks like he's standing in front of a keyhole. It's incredible.
Yeah.
It's just like, wow, contemplating what he's going to do next. And what he does next is totally fuck everything up, which is kind of
Yes.
amazing. So he meets with Alberto, who's Alberto Falcone. He's the heir to the Falcone Empire after Carmine was killed. Alberto is just a rich boy fuck up. He brags about the new drug enterprise to Oz and demeans Oz, calls him a little bitch, and Oz just fucking shoots him, just impulsively shoots him and laughs. And then he
Well,
realizes he really screwed up.
yeah,
Uh,
exactly. He knows just what he did to himself.
yep.
He had like
Yeah.
one moment of happiness, and then oh no.
Yeah. Yeah. He just like that's it. Like he screwed up. And what I loved about that in like thinking about it in later episodes is that it's in every single episode nothing goes right for him. He'll make a plan. He'll make a harebrained plan and it just goes wrong. Everything goes wrong for him all the time. And it's just a great like that's the note you start on. So he's
But I
like,
also
oh, yes. Yeah.
but I think that shows his intelligence too. It's like he's impulsive, but he's cunning, and every time the plan falls apart, he comes up with something else,
Yeah.
and
It's
it gets grimier and grimier, with each iteration. But he never gives up. He always has
yeah.
something. He has one trick more to pull.
Yeah, it's wild though. Like the writers really nailed it in that in each episode, everything would just always go sideways for him. And I was sitting there on the edge of the couch going, how's he going to get out of this one?
Yeah,
Like, how is he going to get out of this one? Like each time I was really curious. So while he's like disposing of the body, he catches a bunch of kids that are like trying to get the rims off his car, shoots at them, yells at them, and then catches one, which is Vic, who ends up being one of the main characters in the show. It's Renzi Feliz. He's a homeless teen, and Oz puts him to work. And Vic will later be described by cast and crew in interviews as the heart of the show. So I thought that was interesting. They knew that from
absolutely.
the outset.
Oh yeah, he's what humanizes Oz for so much of the show, and what leads to Oz's final decision in the end of the series, and that's very powerful. And it's all about Vic. It's all about Vic. That
Yeah,
we learn who the Penguin is, even with all the crazy stuff he's done. Vic reveals who the Penguin really is.
he really does. And that reminds me too, like how much Oz Cobb in this show hates being called the Penguin. Like he
Yes,
hates it. He
yes,
really hates it. And it's interesting that you said that too, because Vic really humanized everyone in the show. That I felt
true.
I mean, just I couldn't find really, other than Oz's girlfriend, I couldn't find really another human character in the show. So, and that brings us to Sofia Falcone, who also shows up in the first episode. She's the murderous daughter of Carmine Falcone. And she shows up having just been released from Arkham Asylum. And when she shows up, it's an interesting shot. I was reading about their intentions with the shot of her first showing up. She's all in white when she comes in the room, and she comes in the room over Penguin's shoulder. And they wanted her to drift in like a ghost.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and it's just perfectly done. I mean, there's just going to be like a bazillion pixels of digital ink written about like how incredible Cristin Milioti is in this role. But it's interesting that she shows up like that, like a ghost, because Oz double crossed her. He's the reason she's in Arkham, and she knows it. And she just kind of comes in and is like, "Hi."
Yep.
And also, interestingly, she is a huge Batman fan. I was reading that she was
Oh,
so, isn't that cool?
that's
I
wonderful.
love that. I know. I love it whenever I find out an actor is like a massive fan of whatever they're in, of whatever IP they're in. It was like finding out Henry Cavill is like a massive Witcher fan. I was like, yes,
Right.
cool. I love it. So there's, tension set up with Sofia and Oz. Um, Oz visits Salvatore Moroni in Blackgate, who's played by Clancy Brown, who, I mean, I love him so much.
Yeah.
Highlander, Dexter, Starship Troopers. I mean, just absolutely incredible. And it this sets up too, just like this the way that people treat Oz and the way that he deals with the world, the way that he's always constantly kind of bullshitting people
Hmm.
and just like massaging them, playing them down. And his wife, Salvatore's wife is Nadia Moroni, is played by Shorey Aghdashloo, who a lot of people like me, Expanse fans, will recognize. But she's just incredible. Also, for Expanse fans, we later see the head of the triads played by Francois Chow, who was Jules Pierre Bao in The Expanse, aka Julie Mao's dad. Anyway, an interesting twist on this Nadia and Sal situation is that, and it's new to the Batman world, is that Sal is so in love with this powerful Iranian woman that he basically gets rid of his Italian henchmen and brings in Persian henchmen. He's got basically like a Persian mafia, which I think is really cool.
Hmm.
And I love this. There's this one of my favorite interactions is where Oz is trying to convince Sal to like, because he's setting up, because Oz wants to double cross, right? He wants to like play the Maronis and the Falcones off each other so he can get
Right.
control of everything.
Right.
And he's talking to Sal, who's Clancy Brown, and come talk to me, come talk to me. What do you think? Just come talk to me sometime. Tell me what you think. And Sal replies, "Fuck you," and that's it. I'm just like, yes. Anyway, so in this we also see like the interesting, like this particular episode too just sets up the scenery. It sets up the costuming. It sets up the makeup. It sets up the color tones and the palettes, and it's like a movie that ends up being played over 8 hours essentially. This entire show. It's incredible.
Hmm.
And it's interesting too finding out about the costuming. Helen Wang, she basically costumed all of the number ones and number twos in the different gangs in different eras.
Wow.
So,
Oh, I love that.
yeah, right? And I also found out that Oz the Penguin had very pointy, uncomfortable shoes.
I noticed that.
Like all of his shoes were very pointy, and the idea, she said, was that he poured himself into this uncomfortable look for this type of perceived masculinity.
Hmm.
And later in the episode we see like one of his feet, and it doesn't fit in a pointy shoe. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
But Helen Wang had one interesting anecdote, and I'll read this quote. She said, "It was during the table read. The actors were still doing their fittings, and we got to this note that Colin wanted a balaclava, which is a very odd request for a table read, but it was because he was so committed to his character. He put the balaclava over his head so people wouldn't see him but hear his Oz voice."
That's brilliant. I
Isn't
love
that
that.
cool?
Because I heard that once he had the makeup on and they were between takes, it was very jarring for anyone to hear Colin Farrell's voice come out of Oz's face.
I bet. I bet. Yeah, I was reading an interview with Clancy Brown who was saying that the first time he actually met Colin Farrell out of makeup was after doing filming with him on this show. And he was completely blown away and hugged him. And he said he had to kind of squeeze him and hug him like a little bit longer because Colin is tiny. He's not this big hulking, Oz Cobb penguin figure. And I just thought that was amazing that he was kind of like taken aback at meeting Colin Farrell as separately to meeting him in the penguin makeup.
Right.
But this episode too, like we talked about this. It ends on Dolly Parton's 9 to 5.
Perfect.
I know. It's amazing. It's amazing. So that sets you up for like just how deep and cool the cuts are on the songs and the music for this show. It's a whole other thing. It's like in episode two. Episode two is more of like unpacking the penguin playing both sides, Sofia dealing with the misogyny in the gangster world, and that they're trying to get rid of her because she's the crazy murderous daughter that no one wants around. We see that she has a very twisted relationship with her therapist, Dr. Julian Rush.
Yeah.
And the main thing that happens in episode two is Penguin is trying to basically double cross both gangs and steal the drugs from one family and deliver it to the other family. And because it's the world of 1 week after the floods, everything in Gotham is FEMA camps, and just everything is in emergency mode. And so they basically steal a FEMA truck and they use like barrels of what should be water for survivors, and they use it to do this heist, which completely goes wrong, of course, because it's Penguin. And they set the ending of everything going to shit to a Bobby Darin song. And you're just like,
Perfect.
wow. Oh
Great.
my God, it's so good. It's so good.
And I believe doesn't Vic save Oz in this episode? This is the one where
Oh,
where Oz is
probably.
this is the one where Oz is captured because Sophia is still convinced that he knows what happened to Alberto.
That's right. That's right. That's
And
the first time Vic saves him,
yeah,
actually.
he's being tortured, and
Yeah.
he crashes a car into the Falcone's compound with Alberto's body in the trunk, and with revenge written on the inside of the trunk,
Oh,
indicating
payback. It says
payback.
payback.
That's right. Excuse me.
Yep.
That it was actually the Maronies that were delivering this
Yeah.
message.
Yep. Well, and that's a great segue into what, like, after this they tell us Vic's story.
Yes.
And we see the flood. We see what happened when the Riddler blew up the seawall from Vic's perspective, which is on a rooftop. So he's up there, he's partying with his girlfriend, and they start seeing bombs go off, and we actually get to see the city flooded. And it kind of took my breath away seeing that happen. It was really incredible.
It's beautiful.
But we
It's a
see
beautiful and harrowing moment.
it is, and we see what makes Vic an orphan and what makes him homeless and everything that he lost, and sort of the void that Oz is moving into in his life. Interestingly, Vic's outfits, everything that Vic wore, like it's I think people probably thought of Vic as kind of just like a second string character, but unlike a lot of the other characters, Vic's outfits were all made from scratch. Everything
Oh,
he wore was made for him. Like he wore a hand printed T-shirt with a made up Gotham basketball team on it.
that's
And
interesting.
isn't that cool? And his color palette in the show begins as colorful. So in all of the first episodes, he's wearing bright colors, and he goes from colorful to dark at the end. Just like, oh, that gives me chills. Well, the all right, midway through, we get episode four, which I think is a really important episode to talk about. And this is the horror episode in my mind. Like
Yes.
this is Sofia has found out that Oz played her and killed her brother, and Oz ditches her, and she's rescued by Dr. Rush, her Dr. Julian Rush, her twisted therapist relationship, and she wakes up in his office, and she takes a walk around his office, and you notice she's looking at some really weird things in his office. One in particular, one thing in particular that I noticed that I actually had to go look up is that there's a painting in the corner that she checks out, and someone described it as the Riddler being strangled or something like that, but it didn't seem that simple. I went and looked it up, and it's a piece of art by an artist, who I'll leave one of the links in the show notes for this. But the piece, interestingly enough, is called I think it's called Scream Once, Scream Louder, or something like that. really freaky and really uncomfortable. But like, yeah, his office is full of really weird stuff, which we'll get back to in a second. Sofia's story is told a little bit in flashbacks, where we find out that back before she was sent to Arkham, where everything is filmed brighter, she's confronted by a journalist with the Hangman killings, which may or may not be her dad. Penguin rats her out to her dad for talking to a journalist, and her entire family conspires to send her to Arkham as the Hangman. So they basically frame her for the Hangman serial killings of strangulations of sex workers, essentially. And we see a hint that it may actually be her dad, although I'm not completely convinced, even still.
That it was her father?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting, because I really bought it that he killed Sofia's mother by hanging her as the hangman. But I can also see it. I think what you're saying is she might have found out he's the hangman and killed herself.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, that's
That's
possible.
that's kind of what I'm thinking, because I'm just not completely convinced in some ways that Sofia isn't Hangman, because I mean the Sofia was the last person the journalist saw alive. So there's that. But okay, so then when we get into Arkham, we get into like a beautiful horror episode. What I found interestingly, they switch from normal camera shots to handheld camera for her entire transition into Arkham. So it's all handheld. It's all really close to her face, where they strip her. She meets her therapist, the guy who's her present day therapist, who's a little too intimate. This is when she first meets him, and she's tortured. She's goes through electroshock therapy, and she experiences the horror of Arkham, which is really just a terrifying asylum, the way that they filmed it here. And there's one character in this that no one is talking about. And I know that you'll remember this character, Richard, but it's when they set Sofia up with the character that isn't chained up. And she's
Yes.
like,
Yes.
does anyone notice she's not chained? And everyone's
Yes.
ignoring Sofia. That character's name was Abby, played by Sid Skidmore. And it's just the most terrifying physical portrayal. Like, just the way that she moves, her physical performance is it's so uncomfortable. It's so jarring.
Yeah.
And it turns out Skidmore has clowning training.
Oh,
So,
that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of
right?
sense. The way she used her body in the
Yeah.
show.
Yeah, I just couldn't get that out of my head, the way that she was moving in the way that she confronted Sophia, and then of course stabbed herself in the throat with a fork.
Right.
Like, but yeah, I feel like that's a really overlooked. She's only on screen for a couple of minutes, but I feel like that was overlooked, because that was when I was like, Jesus Christ, this is scary.
Yeah.
So back to present day, Sophia wakes up in her creepy therapist's office, aware of what she's gone through, right?
Yes.
We see Rush's office. We see more of the weird stuff that's in there. And that's when she basically realizes who she is and what she's gone through. And that's when she puts on the yellow dress, confronts her family for the last time. And the yellow dress, like up until this point, she's been dressed in color blocking, like solid colors, and very covered up. Her scars on her neck, her arm, everything covered up. And I heard someone say that it was because she wanted to hide the scars, but I feel like for me, it's more of containment. She was trying to be contained. And
Okay. I
with the
can see
yellow
that.
dress, right?
I can see that.
It's like there's hiding and then there's containing. And in the yellow dress, it shows her entire body and all of her scars. And Milioti, in an interview recently after the show stopped, said, quote, "It's not until we see the yellow dress that she finds the one that fits."
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's great.
that gives That gives me chills too. That is actually, she said that that's one of her two favorite outfits in the entire show. The yellow dress with the gas mask, and then the head to toe red number in the finale.
I love the red
But
the red outfit
oh,
was incredible.
right? Apparently, like 70% of her wardrobe was vintage.
See, that surprises me because I would have thought you said Victor's stuff was handmade. I would have assumed all of her stuff was handmade, but it was
Right? It
vintage.
looked like it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, they did a lot of like hunting for outfits for her. And
I
there's
bet.
a an interview with the costumer talking about how they were trying to protect some of her outfits in some of the scenes because they were vintage one of a kinds.
Oh, sure, sure.
Yeah. So yeah, she singularly kills everybody. That is the highest body count episode for
Except for
sure.
except for Gia, the little girl,
Right,
her
right.
niece, her niece.
That's right. She saved the niece. That's right. That's right. So after that, Penguin, another botched bunch of bullshit with the Penguin, right? Like he kidnapped Salvatore Moroni's son. That all goes sideways into shit. Penguin ends up killing Nadia Moroni, which is a bummer because I really wanted more of Shore. I love that actress so much. But I think this is something fun for you and I. When Sofia is at her house pretending to be super sad that her family's dead,
Yeah.
Con O'Neill shows up reprising his role from the Batman as the chief,
Yep.
and it's Izzy Hands
It's
from Our Flag
Izzy.
Means Death.
Yeah.
Yes, Izzy. Oh, I was so happy to see him. I love him so much.
Absolutely.
One of the interesting, like, notable things about this episode in particular to me is that this is when we see her creepy therapist, Dr. Julian Rush, beg Sophia to let him kill people with her. He's
Y-
like, that thing you did, let me do that with you.
Yeah.
And she does. And this is the episode where she becomes Sofia Gigante. She disavows her family. And there's an incredible scene at the table where she gets Johnny Vitti. Johnny Vitti's the only other one that she saves from getting
Yes.
gassed.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, and it's Johnny Vitti who's played by Michael Kelly, who played the most absolutely terrifying character in House of Cards. Like he was the scary guy
Hmm.
in House of Cards, that Netflix show. But yeah, she didn't kill him. She kidnapped him. She basically tortured him and then got Johnny Vitti to bring all of the gangs together to come meet with her. And now we see her, she's fully unraveled. She's just like showing all of her scars. She's got the makeup that looks like a mask. She's wearing textures and furs. She's not in color blocking anymore. And she says, "Hey, here's a big bag of money. Who wants to join me?" And Johnny Vitti is like, basically tries to kind of like little lady her a little bit. And she just pulls out a gun and shoots him.
Yep. It's
I
so
did not expect
abrupt.
that.
It's so abrupt. It wasn't any kind of, movie murder. It was just bang,
Yeah.
and just kind of perfect for that. It was a perfect ambush from the least, from the place you least expect it.
Yeah. And that's another indicator to me. I mean, I think Arkham taught her how to kill because we saw her kill Magpie in Arkham, and they
Yeah.
definitely, it seemed like they were electroshocking her and training her to be a murderer,
Mm-hmm.
right? They were just going to make her what she had been accused of being.
Right.
But that moment where I was like, "Oh, she's cold-blooded," right? Like that's it.
Which is another interesting thing to me. Everyone focuses on Oz as a sociopath, but Sophia is, to me, right up there with him. She kills her whole family. She saves Gia, her little niece, who I think she identifies with to a degree as an innocent,
Yeah,
but
definitely.
then but then casts her off to a shitty orphanage and leaves her there.
Yeah. Yeah.
It just abandons her. So Sophia, I think, in her own way, is right up there with Oz in terms of psychopathology.
Yes, definitely. Well, and that scene too, just at the table, like, I mean, as Johnny Vidi's bleeding out, she dumps the money on the table and
In his
is,
blood.
yeah, and the gangsters are like picking up bloody stacks of money. And it's not that, I mean, when you see it, you see it, but it's not like an in your face kind of shot with that. You're
Mm-hmm.
just like, oh, wow, they're actually doing that.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
so after this point, Sofia teams up with Sal, and there's this really amazing scene that is the beginning of episode 6, where it's the kitchen scene. Do you remember this scene with this cooking?
Absolutely. It's an excellent scene.
Oh my God. And she's like, "You want me to chop this?" And I'm like, "I really need to see more like serial killer cooking shows." Like Hannibal is what is like one of my all-time favorites, but it's like I wanted to see more of Sal and Sophia cooking. Like I want
Mm-hmm.
them to have a psycho killer cooking show together. It's like amazing.
Oh, that would be great.
Um,
What a great spin-off that would be.
I know. Lauren LaFranc, the creator showrunner, said that that scene was like a father making a grilled cheese for his daughter, like in the middle of the
Ye-
night.
yes. Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect.
Right. In episode 6, this is the one where Vic kills somebody, and it just shatters him. And there's this scene where Oz is just holding Vic. He just holds him,
Yeah.
and he's like there for him. And it's so tender, but it's also so psychotic because
Mm-hmm.
Oz is like it gets easier. But it's just you're like, oh, that was the moment when I was like, Oz really cares for Vic.
Yeah.
Like I really felt that in that moment. In episode 6, also Sophia finds Eve Carlo, which is the penguin squeeze and has been his alibi. But it's basically, I've seen different descriptions of like his lover or the woman he pays for companionship or whatever. But I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it's a relationship, right? Like
He,
any other.
yeah, he is paying her, but I think they do have some kind of weird, genuine connection at this point.
They absolutely do. They absolutely do. And it's a very tense moment when Sophia goes into Eve's apartment because Sophia is there to kill Eve and find out where the penguin is.
Yeah.
And that's when they have this moment of realness where Sophia is like, you know, you dress up like this for yourself or for them? And she's like, Eve's like, a little of both, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's when they kind of have a heart to heart about the hangman, because Eve is scared because she believes Sophia's the hangman, and Sophia's like, I'm not. That was my dad, and tells her that the penguin lied about who killed Eve's girls, basically. And what's interesting about this is that this is the Eve's family unit is kind of like the only family unit that is really a good one, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yes.
her and her sex worker family is like the only genuine family unit in the whole show. And you see that when Sophia is like basically says, I wish I had that. I wish I had what you have with them.
Mm-hmm.
And as Sophia's leaving, Eve double crosses Oz and tells Sophia where to find Penguin, which surprised me, like really surprised me.
Everyone's
But I will say,
compromised. Everyone's
everyone,
compromised. Everyone's compromised.
everyone in Eve's apartment. I think this is really important because I noticed it and I was like trying to get other friends to notice it and they're like, yeah, maybe. I'm like, no, there's an upside down umbrella in her apartment. Like as a nod to the penguin,
Yeah.
like old school penguin. Turns out that was intentional. That they
Of course.
found an umbrella, right? They found an umbrella and they put it over Eve's bed. So, and the idea was that under the umbrella is where he feels safe.
Yes. Yes.
Wow.
Which makes a lot of sense because at the end we also he kind of becomes old school penguin.
Oh, right?
His his
Yeah.
his his,
Like,
his clothing and his look and his manner changes completely.
well, that's what happens. I mean, that's one of the things we see in episode 7 is him watching Top Hat, the Fred Astaire movie Top Hat
Hmm.
with his mom.
Yes.
And Fred Astaire is dancing in a tux and tails, like a penguin outfit, basically, and has a cane and is mock shooting people. And you see in young Oz Cobb's eyes that he's just like, yeah, that's cool, man. Like, I want to be like that. Um, it's really, it's like, oh, you're like, okay, that's where he's gonna get his outfit from, probably.
Yeah.
At least that's what I was thinking. But I did find out by reading again about the costuming that until the very last scene in the last episode,
Mm-hmm.
none of Oz's outfits match. Like none of
Oh,
the suits are all pieces that are put together. And it's only in the final scene when he's wearing his tuxedo is it one solid outfit.
that makes perfect sense. I didn't notice that the other suits didn't match, but I did notice how different that last suit looked. Like it was perfect.
Yeah.
It fit him
Yeah.
perfectly.
Yeah.
He was a new person.
Absolutely. But yeah, so as we get to the end of the show, we find out that that Oz killed his brothers, and he's been kind of pushing this painful story of losing his brothers. But we find out that it was actually because he kind of like passively and impulsively killed them. Partly because that's who he is, and partly to have his mom to himself.
Yeah.
And we find out that she knew and ended up being kind of complicit about it.
Mm-hmm.
She hatched a plan to have Oz killed, her son killed, and then decided not to do it. And which tells me a lot about, like, 'cause in the beginning of the show I didn't like her. She was so mean to him and so cruel to him and
Yes.
so heartless about like him not being a real man unless he can like, take care of her and take care of himself and stuff like that. And you start to see that like, oh, you feel horrible for her, but also that she's a monster too.
Yes.
And again, it's like you're saying, it's like everyone is so broken, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
you don't know where to put your alliances in it. And I love that where you love the characters. It's the show where it's like you end up hating everybody, but you really are desperate to see more of it.
Yes, exactly. And
It's
actually,
so strange.
that scene later where I know I'm jumping forward a bit, but we're talking about
No, we're
Oz,
done. We're almost done.
Oz,
It's fine.
Oz, Oz and his brothers and his mother. There's the scene where Sofia has captured Oz and his mother, and is
Yeah.
Oz is tied up. She is threatening to torture the mother, and
She's gonna cut off his finger like what happened to her brother Alberto.
yeah, she literally
Cut off the
has
mom's finger.
she has a cigar cutter around the mother's little
Yes.
finger, and
Yes.
all Oz has to do is admit to her, say out loud that he killed his brothers, and he won't do it. And what was interesting, at least to me, about that scene is because his mother has dementia, his refusal, absolute refusal to say what he did, made me think for a minute, well, maybe what happened to his brothers was her dementia. Maybe he didn't do it.
Oh.
He so refused to say it. And I thought for a moment
Right.
that no, 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 everything we know is wrong. She made this up. But then, of course, I was wrong.
Yeah.
No, Oz is
I know, right?
Oz is a psycho. He was letting his mother be tortured and would have let her lose her finger because Oz has to be in control, and he could never cop, especially with his mother. He could never cop to what he did to his brothers because he's such a mama's boy, and to say that out loud would have wrecked something between them, even though they both knew what he did.
Well, I mean, we see how much I think he was using dementia to gaslight her,
Yes.
and I was with you there though too, especially because I mean, we're under just a mountain of makeup, the amount of things that we saw go through Oz's head just through his facial expressions
Yes.
while he was trying to figure out while he was deciding to gaslight, while you could see him not, freaking out that his mom was in, in jeopardy, but also trying to gain control of the narrative. And
Yes.
it's interesting because you say he needs to be in control, but I feel like this guy is like, he's never in control. What he's so desperate for is to be in control of the story.
Yes, that makes
Like
sense.
it's his story, it's his narrative.
Yes.
And if it's not, and it's, yeah, it's a type of, I don't know, it's definitely some psycho shit, but it's just like he needs that story to be exactly the story that he wants told.
Yes.
Otherwise, he's not okay. Like, I think he knows he's never going to be completely in control, but it's all about image to him, I think is what it is.
Yeah.
And no image matters more than how he sees himself.
Absolutely.
I think
Absolutely.
that's his pathos to me. But yeah, so she's about to get her finger chopped off, and she's like, Oz, it's my fucking finger. I know you did it.
Yeah.
I know you did it. And just you watch what happens on his face, and it's unreal. And Sofia is like, she just kind of stops and like backs up. And this
Yeah.
is exactly how she wanted to hurt Oz. The most personal relationship that he has. And
Yes.
she kind of backs up. The mom gets up, breaks a bottle, and stabs Penguin. And then has a stroke. Everything goes sideways. We get this gorgeous scene of Sofia Falcone in this stunning black dress with a red sash around her neck pick up a gun and try and shoot Oz as he scoops up his mom and runs outside
Yeah.
and gets away with her. And at that point, Sofia makes the call to all of the gangs and says, whoever gets him gets everything. I'm leaving.
Yep.
I'm leaving town. I'm done with this life. You can have my house, my fortune, my drug trade, all of it. And after which she goes and lights 3 cigarettes and burns down her entire house. Which is just
Everything.
like one of the most beautiful scenes I've ever seen in my life, I swear.
Yeah.
We're just like, what's she doing? Oh, it's a cigarette for every room. Like,
Yeah.
it's amazing.
And she walks away with literally nothing.
But
She has nothing in her hands except what she's wearing. She's just left everything behind.
yeah, it's incredible. And she's like, I'm done. And she does this beautiful burning down the house, driving away, gets to the hangar with the airplane, and is ready to go. And the triad boss is ready to do the takeover, and we find out there's been a giant double cross.
Yeah.
And everyone gets killed except for Sofia and Oz. I mean, and obviously like Penguin's gang. And Penguin takes her and puts her in the back of a car and is driving her to the river to execute her, basically. Like, this is it. And you can see her kind of going through this in her head. It's it's interesting, like in an interview with Clancy Brown, he said about Cristina Milioti that she's one of the only actors he's ever worked with that can do, and he compared her to Sidney Poitier, which really shocked me. That she has a relationship with the camera where just every single expression that she does is is like dialogue, basically. And we see this happening in the back of the car while she's on her way to the river. And it's wild. And the scene, he takes her down there and she turns around and she's ready to get shot in the back of the head. And helicopters show up.
Yeah.
He's basically sold her out and she's going back to Arkham. And that is just like, just to have everything end up with her having nothing and shit and going back to Arkham. I mean, her dad kept her there for 10 years.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, it's so, it's, it's such an intense turn of events for that character for me.
Oh, it's hard. It's her worst nightmare. It's her worst. She had everything,
Yeah.
and now she's back back in basically bedlam with no power at all.
Yeah, back to her abusers. Like
Yeah,
back to where she's just going to be abused basically and locked up. And after that we find out that Oz's mom is in a vegetative state. And Oz decides that he's going to make his power play into politics. He goes down, sits in the judge's chambers and plays with the gavel and talks to one of the, what was he, the commissioner or representative?
yeah. He was one of the borough president. He ran one of the rich areas in town.
Right,
But
right. He's like a supervisor,
yeah,
like
yeah.
a district supervisor.
There you go.
Who tells Oz that he's going to be subpoenaed, that there's a big anti-corruption cleanup thing happening. We also see in that room, in the courtroom that he's sitting in, the empty courtroom that those two guys are in, the curtains in the background are in the shape of owls, which a number of people think is a nod to the Council of Owls, the secret society that's in one of the Batman narratives. But yeah, so the supervisor tells Oz that if he wants to play in politics, he's got to clean up. He's got to clean
Right,
up his act.
right.
And Oz is like, no problem, squeaky clean. And he goes and meets with Vic at the river.
Yeah, yeah. To me, this is like this is what the show is all about. This scene.
Really?
I
Oh
think
my
so.
God.
I think more than the scene with his brothers, the scene with Vic, to me, is the most important single scene because everything, this, the stuff with his brothers happened in the past. He was a child. He killed them as a child. They were all kids.
He passively killed them too,
He
basically.
passively killed them. He basically locked them in an overflow sewer in the rain where he knew it would flood. So he didn't actually like push them off a roof or anything like that. He just let them drown and kind of relished it. Like when he went home and told his mother that they were at the movies, there were all these images of him looking out the window watching it rain, and you know in your mind he's counting the moments of like when that tunnel is going to flood and what's going to happen to them, and they're going to be gone, and he's going to have his mother all to himself. But this was all when he was a child, and family, his mom and family means so much to him. And then we have the scene with Vic as his family. And what is
And I think, sorry?
and what does Penguin say about family? He says family makes you weak.
Yeah.
And then he kills Vic with his bare hands.
Yeah. And
He's
it's excruciating to watch.
and he holds him. I mean, partly he's holding him to kill him, but partly it was you almost got this feeling of like he was cradling him in his arms at the same time.
Yeah. It was tender.
It was
So terrible.
yeah, it was as tender a gruesome murder as anyone could commit.
Yeah. And Penguin killing Vic is worse than seeing Sofia gassing to death like 35 of her family members in the
Yes,
show.
I think so. I
Like,
think so.
I was so broken. I'm still really just got bereft after that scene, after that decision by the show as well. And that was if I guess you could say that was the ending of the humanity for Oz or the Penguin, but like it just like did he ever have any, you know?
Well, it answers the question though. Did he ever have any? And clearly, if he did, it's gone. It's not there
It's gone.
anymore. If there was one
Yeah.
shred left, it's like, nope. It's me, it's my mom, and it's power from here on out. And I have to be, again, we come back to control.
Right.
Control of his story, control of his narrative.
Yeah. Just yeah, his own personal narrative.
Mm-hmm.
His own story. His story he tells himself,
Yes.
right? And
Ex-
that yeah, it's the story he tells himself about himself. That is the most important story. That is the most important thing. It's more important than people,
yes.
right? Yeah,
And the
it's more
story
important than a human life for him.
and the story he tells himself is it's so clearly twisted, but it's so clearly stamped into who he is, and the show in the very last scene when he's dancing.
Right. Right,
When
because after that, we see him on top. We see him in his penthouse. Interestingly, he's in a building that we see in a shot where when Vic was on the roof right before the city was flooded.
yeah,
We see that building in the background that
yes,
Oz moves into in the final episode. We see we see Oz come in and he's in a full suit. He's in his full tuxedo, and we see that he's keeping his mom in a vegetative state in a medical setup in a penthouse with a view.
mm-hmm.
And Deirdre O'Connell, I mean,
Yeah,
God, give her all the awards for playing his mother on this show.
absolutely,
But the actress said in an interview that that scene she was supposed to have a tear leak out of her eye
mm-hmm.
for that scene, and she said that it just came naturally because that was the moment she felt Oz completely withdraw his love for his mother.
Yeah,
And he goes in there and he sees her, and he basically you can tell that he's like saying goodbye to her in a way. He goes into
mm-hmm.
the other room, and we see a woman that looks exactly like his mother,
Yes,
like in his mother's dress, making a drink, playing his mother's music, his mother's makeup, hair similar to his mother, and it's Eve Carlo.
yeah,
And I'll note, she's got a cigarette holder, which is, I think, a
yes,
nod to the original penguin costuming,
that's
right?
right, that's right.
So from her, we're getting the cigarette holder and the umbrella.
Perfect.
And yeah, and it's so deeply disturbing,
Mm-hmm. And
that scene. She's playing his mother.
she's isn't she wearing the same dress that the
Yep.
mother wore the night she was going to have him killed?
Yep, she's wearing his mother's dress.
Yeah,
And he goes in and they dance, and he tells her to say the things to him that he wants his mother to say.
I'm proud of you. You did
Mm-hmm.
good.
Yep. Nothing standing in your way now. Gotham is yours.
Yes. And he got it. He got it all. He got rid of everybody, and he got his mom. He
Mm-hmm.
got his mom and Eve. That's all he ever wanted. And from now on, well, season 2 is he
Yeah.
is it
Well, everyone wants to know if there's
is
going to be a season two. I hope so.
I hope
Um,
so. I mean, it stopped at an interesting point, but I definitely heard a conversation with Colin Farrell where he definitely says, "Oh yeah, next season's politics." Next,
oh, he did.
yeah,
Yes.
he said
Okay.
it's all
Good.
about politics.
It was my. So are they doing? I think they're doing the Batman Part Two after this, right? And
Yes,
like, doesn't
I don't know if they've shot the Batman sequel or if they're shooting the Batman sequel. But
okay.
we do see the bat signal as the last image of the last
Mm-hmm.
episode.
Yep. We see the bat signal. We see Sophia in Arkham getting a letter from Selena Kyle.
Yes.
So that's interesting. There have been tons of rumors and guesses about who the main villain is going to be in the
Hmm.
Batman Part Two, if that's what comes next.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's a setup right there. There are two actually really cool crackpot theories though that I want to share before we move on to Strange Darling.
Sure.
And because you know me, I love my crackpot theories. So Eve Carlo, Penguin Squeeze.
Ah,
Basil Carlo was the original Clayface.
okay.
And some people are saying, could she be Lady Clayface, aka Lady Clay, able to
Interesting.
transform herself into whatever she wants to look like? There
Mm-hmm.
were several clay faces. The Lady Clay was the most powerful of the clay faces.
Okay.
So
Interesting.
that's right. I was like, wait, what? I did like look up Clayface when I saw that there was
Mm-hmm.
a link between the two names, same spelling and everything. And then the other crackpot theory, which I'm kind of excited about because I loved Dr. Julian Rush.
Yes.
I loved Theo Rossi's portrayal was incredible. He was in Terminator, Luke Cage. He was in Cloverfield, so he's done some like horror-ish kind of stuff. But I love Theo Rossi. I think he's amazing. And he was just a perfect little psychopath, right?
Yeah.
Therapist. And kind of sexy. Had like a kind of sexy scene where she's like, the scene opens up and he's been like tied to a chair
Oh
and
yeah.
she's had sex with him and he's all scratched up and she's like, I hurt you. And he's like, I deserved it. And you're like, oh
Yes.
my God, wow, that's, whew, okay, I need a fan. But yeah, in episode four, where she's looking through his office, we see that really creepy painting that's really awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a zoomed out shot of Sofia looking through his stuff. Like she opens up a drawer and finds a bunch of medications, which is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look closely, there are two objects that look really freaky on his desk. One is a glove with syringes at the end.
I missed that.
It's when you go back and look, you can't unsee it.
Okay.
It's and you can see there's a little bit of something else out of the corner of like over Sophia's shoulder that never quite comes in focus that looks like it might be a hook hand of some
Hmm.
kind. But there's definitely a glove with syringes at the end. And some people have said that they've seen what looks like a mask, like a rag mask on his
Oh,
desk.
I got it.
So the suggestion might be that he's the scarecrow,
Right.
which would make sense because I mean, if he's messing around with medications and they were
Sure.
doing like the experimental drug that was going to be, the big that was, one of the main parts of this show like came from Arkham. It was something they used.
That's
Sophia was
right.
like, we're going to sell this drug on the streets because they use it on us in the asylum.
Right.
It would make sense that, I mean, if Dr. Julian Rush is like experimenting with drugs and, the syringe glove was what really set it off though. But the Scarecrow's original name was Dr. Jonathan Crane.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean,
It. It.
Julian, Jonathan, Rush
Mm-hmm.
is a bird, Crane is a bird. I don't know.
It's entirely possible, and I could honestly see the Scarecrow. I think more than Clayface, because Clayface is sort of more of a comic character, sort of more superhero-ish than Scarecrow.
Right.
Scarecrow is an opportunistic person,
Yes.
and
Right.
you know what I mean. The show is pretty grounded, and I mean, if we want to see the Clayface played as a master of disguise, I could see that. But I have a feeling the way they've grounded the show, it's not going to be a fancy, ostentatious kind of villain in the second season.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, no, it's non-powered people is the
yeah,
thing.
yes, exactly, exactly. And really, I mean, Magpie is another character from the comics that Sophia beats the hell out of her, but we don't see her die.
I thought she died.
Does
I mean,
well, I was never clear on that. I was never
okay.
clear if Magpie
I
died.
hope not. I mean, I hope not because the actress that was playing her, I mean, it was just perfect. It was again more of the horror of that episode.
Yeah,
Like just terrifying.
yeah. And I would like to see much more of her. That's why I think that more than
Yeah, me
anything,
too. Me
that's why
too.
I'm kind of convinced that she might not be dead.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about Strange Darling.
All right. Um,
I've got some
just a second.
quotes about it. Let's see. Slash Film called it clever, hyper stylish thriller that smothers us with its style right from the jump
Mm-hmm.
and compares it to Tarantino. Guardian gave it 4 out of 5 stars, calling it grisly but audacious serial killer horror outside the comfort zone in uncompromising bad taste, but made with lethal precision and discipline.
Beautiful.
Salt Lake Film Review hated it, compared it to Tarantino,
Mm-hmm.
called it clunky and poorly done, said the characterizations were, quote, incredibly self indulgent, and said, quote, it seems so satisfied with itself for jumping back and forth, only revealing what is necessary. Nerds of Color called it tense, twisted, and terrific. Mike Manalo, writing for Nerds of Color, said, I simply cannot get it out of my head. Also compared it to Tarantino and just raved about the performances and the script and how
Mm-hmm.
well written it was. Said it was fast paced, violent as hell, and quite chaotic, with gorgeous shots in spite of the ugly situations. 25L called it the smartest horror film of the year. And Nebraska's The Reader called it the meanest, worst movie of the year.
Nice. I'll note another site that hated the movie was Roger Ebert's site, which
Really?
I just dismissed immediately because Ebert and his whole crew have such a fraught history with killers and violence. I mean, I remember very specifically that Roger Ebert himself hated Kick-Ass, that movie,
Oh,
because
really?
a little girl shouldn't talk like that.
Oh, come on.
Yeah.
That is so tedious. That is so tedious.
And so I don't give the Ebert crowd much credit for this. And I was kind of in my own way I was kind of delighted that they hated it because it's like, yeah, yeah, you're kind of proving my point.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because the the two, like the Salt Lake Film Review and the Reader, who really really hated it. First of all, they couldn't really say why they hated it,
Mm-hmm.
especially the Reader, because they were like, we don't do spoilers, so they literally could not say why they hated it.
Right.
And I was like, oh my god, come on. And another reason they hated it was because personally, I think they misunderstood the violence.
Mm-hmm.
Their take on it was that she was an abused woman who was abused from the beginning to the end. And I'm like,
Oh, that's
interesting.
I didn't take that at all, and I don't think Willa Fitzgerald, who played the lady, would ever say that. I mean, I've read interviews with her. She never said anything like that. That she's some poor abused woman. She made her own
Right,
choices. She made her choices. She clearly had problems, but it was nothing like, oh, this poor abused creature has to act out. What she was doing was
right.
purely intentional.
Yeah, the take on it too was that it was just the film was gratuitously abusing her from start to finish for the sake of it. And I really take that as a complete misread
Hmm.
on the very interesting way that BDSM was portrayed in this film.
Yeah, yeah. I
I'm
think
like, wow, this is someone who doesn't understand how this type of BDSM happens.
and
Anyway, I'll
why
let you. I'll,
and why anyone would choose it. I think that's the problem.
right,
A lot of people
right,
outside the community see they can't conceive of someone wanting to play in that arena,
right.
and and it gives them twisted. It lets them feel above the characters. They want to save the poor woman because she's so deluded or she's been sort of coerced into this. And in fact, everything violent that happens to her in the beginning of the movie was her idea. It was her
It's
game.
yeah, it's something she dictated the terms of and
Hmm.
consented to and had a safe word for.
Yes, she had a safe word. And you saw them early on. You saw them negotiating a scene the way
Yeah,
you do.
exactly.
It's like,
Exactly.
I want you to push me. Well, how far? And then she asks him, so if I say no, what does it mean? And he says yes, exactly. And that they establish
Yeah.
Mr. Snuffleupagus is the safe
Yep.
word.
As the safe word. Yep. Yep.
So as far as they go, the safe word is always there and is honored when it comes up.
Yeah. Well, we can get into
We can
that
get into
as
that,
we
yeah.
talk about this. Yeah, because it's the way that it's structured is you don't realize this is happening, and that
Yeah.
is very necessary, actually.
So, Strange Darling was directed by J.T. Molnar. He's been making films since 2008, but Strange Darling is only his second feature, the other being
Wow.
a Western called Outlaws and Angels.
Okay.
The
I haven't seen
two,
that.
me neither. The two leads are the lady and the demon. The lady is Willa Fitzgerald, and her horror credits include Scream, the TV series, and Mike Flanagan's Fall of the House of Usher.
Oh, nice.
The
That's
demon
right.
is Kyle Garner. Garner is very much a horror veteran, starring in films like Smile, Jennifer's Body, and 2022 Scream.
He was in Jennifer's Body?
Yes, he
Oh,
was.
wow.
Yes, he was.
Oh, another reason to go back and watch it again.
Great movie.
Cool.
And I forget which of the newspapers you mentioned that said it looked great, and it did. And what's interesting about that is the cinematographer is Giovanni Ribisi, who's known as an actor. And
That's right. Yeah.
he was one of the producers, and he's now, I don't know if it's a full-time thing, but he's switching over, in this case, to cinematography, and does a beautiful job with a small budget. I mean, the movie looks
Oh my God.
great.
It's so gorgeous. It is. It's just the colors, everything. It's shot so beautifully, and I actually found a blog post, a profile blog post on the cinematography and shooting of Strange Darling on Kodak.com
Yes.
because it was shot on Kodak 35 millimeter. But I was so surprised. I'm like, wow, this is an interesting film for them to align themselves with publicly.
Well, it makes a lot of sense. I've shot with Kodak film. Kodak film has a lot of warm tones to it.
Right, right.
So that makes perfect sense to me that they would have gone with Kodak.
Yeah, I was just surprised that Kodak aligned their IP with the
Yeah.
film publicly like that because I'm like, wow, have you seen the film? You guys know it's in this, right? All right. So it starts
So
with a chase scene.
it starts with a chase scene, but what I think we should, I want to take a step back right here because people keep comparing it to Tarantino. And I
I
think the
know.
main reason the Tarantino comparison comes in is because it's a non-linear story the way Pulp Fiction was. So it's told out of order.
Oh, that's why. Okay.
Whereas I think it was clever in Pulp Fiction, I think it's more diabolical here because
Yes.
by telling it out of order, it plays with our expectations of what a serial killer story is and about gender roles in horror. Be-
Yes.
because, as you said, it opens with a chase, and it's the lady or it's someone. It's a blonde. We don't know who yet. It's a blonde being chased in a. She's in a dopey little red sedan. She's being chased by a man in a very powerful pickup truck who has a gun and he has a lot of cocaine and he is
Yeah.
just shoving it up his nose as he chases her.
Yeah. It's like a total grr bro moment.
Right.
And
But that also has a different meaning once you get into the story. All the cocaine he's snorting isn't just that he's on a coke high. It's something else too.
yes. All right, so this is told in 6 chapters,
Yes,
and it's told out of order.
it's told out
So
of
we
order.
start with title card 3, is that right?
We start well. First, we first start in black and white.
Yes, that's right.
The demon and the lady are in a car together, and the first bit of
Oh, no, but
dialogue.
she's running through the field.
Well, she's running through the field.
Yeah.
Actually, no, I'm sorry. That's backwards. We actually open with the black and white, and she's running through the field later.
Yeah.
They are in the
Okay.
car together, and she asks, I'm going to have to ask you a question. Are you a serial killer? For a moment, the man doesn't say anything. Then we do a slam cut to him shirtless, doing something clearly violent. It looks like he's strangling someone. We hear choking sounds. Then we cut to black. And we get a title card that comes up explaining that this is a true story. Now, this is more like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre fake out. Texas Chainsaw Massacre claims to be a true story, but that's the director Molnar playing games with us, subverting our expectations as to how the
Okay.
story and power dynamics are going to play out. What is true about the story is that the Electric Lady, the serial killer, was probably inspired by British serial killer Joanna Dennehy.
Oh, a real one.
Dennehy, I can never pronounce her name. Dennehy is famous because she doesn't kill for specific reasons. Unlike Eileen Wuornos, who hated men because of their abuse, Dennehy kills because men are dumb and killing them is fun.
Wow.
The difference is she a serial killer? She's more like a spree killer because she basically assaults a number of people in a very short period of time. In 2013, Dennehy killed 3 men in 10 days using a knife,
Wow.
getting friends to help bury them in local ditches. Then she and her friends drove to another town where Dennehy stabbed 2 more men while they were out walking a dog.
Oh my God.
She was never stealthy about her crimes, and she didn't seem to care about the consequences when she was arrested 2 days later and sentenced to life in prison without parole. Only, I believe, the second woman in England, second or third woman in England ever to get that sentence.
Wow.
She loved killing men, but she didn't kill women because she was a mother. That was her rationale.
Okay. Okay.
So the reluctance to kill women will be interesting and important later, because with the lady, she's reluctant to kill women, but in the end, she is in survival mode, and if they get in her way, they're just another devil to her. So we've had the black and white opening. We've had the questions. We've had the Texas Chainsaw Crawl explaining this is a true story. Then we cut to a woman running through the woods for her life. The left side of her head is bloody, as are her hands. There's a car chase. As I said, the shitty little red sedan followed by a very powerful pickup truck driven by the demon. And
It's a Pinto.
It is a red Pinto with no power whatsoever. And that
Just like
pickup,
in Cujo.
yes, that pickup truck is closing in on it fast. And then we go to chapter 3. The title card pops up. So we're getting the story out of order and in very small pieces.
Yeah.
So the demon is in the truck. He snorts coke, not pleasurably, desperately, as he speeds after the lady. Finally, he just seems to get fed up, and he stops, climbs into the back of his truck, sights down on the red Pinto, and shoots at her with a rifle. He doesn't hit her, but he hits her car. She spins out and spins off the road, but she manages to get out and run into the woods. Now the demon
It's a great
chases.
chase scene.
It's a great
Yeah.
chase scene. The demon chases her through the woods with his rifle in hand, quietly stalks her through the woods. And we just get this long period of kind of silence of him stalking her through the woods, her being very, very quiet, and then suspecting is getting closer and taking off again, running through the woods, and finally coming to a very tense moment where the woods end and it's just an open field. And she tears through it because she sees a very pretty farmhouse in the distance. And she climbs over the wire fence, runs to the door, and begs to be helped.
Right.
And the couple that are there, a man and a woman, are scared of her at first, but she collapses into their arms and they take her in.
Mm-hmm.
Chapter 5. We skip right ahead. The lady is hiding somewhere small and dark while we hear the demon stalking her outside,
Right.
saying, "Here, kitty, kitty, kitty." The demon is stalking through the house, going methodically from room to room. He's
It's the house that we just saw her go to.
Yes, the very nice farmhouse that the couple were in. And he is merciless as he goes from room to room. He finds a trunk in one of the bedrooms and he thinks she's hiding. He says, "Here, kitty, kitty," and he shoots the trunk, but it's empty.
Before even opening it. Yeah.
Before he's up, does the same thing in another room. He shoots a trunk. It's empty too. He gets furious.
Right. And at this point, when I'm watching it, I'm like, oh my God, I hope that she can stay quiet.
Absolutely, you're rooting for her. You're absolutely rooting for
Yeah.
her, knowing this guy with a gun is after her as she's bleeding. Then we see him go into the kitchen, and there's a dead body on the floor. The prepper, the husband of the couple, is face down in
Right.
a pool of blood.
Who are preppers, we find out later, yeah.
Yes, and we don't know. The demon has no reaction to seeing him there dead. We assume at that point that he just killed the guy
Right.
because he's clearly a maniac.
Yeah, he's just killing.
He's
just going to kill.
He's just going to kill until he gets.
Even if it's Ed Begley Jr.
even if it's nice old Ed Begley with a ponytail.
I know. It's so great seeing him in this film.
The next thing is interesting. He goes frustrated. He goes back outside the house to the lawn, and looks around, and there are all these chickens. It's a prepper house, so they have all this food stored. They have drugs. They have weapons. They have animals to produce, eggs and to eat if they need to. And while he's walking around, these little chickens are walking around, and he sees big chunks of frozen meat lying on the lawn. And he goes back into the kitchen because he knows something now. And he walks straight to the large freezer in the kitchen. And we know that he knows she's hiding in there.
Yeah.
"Here, kitty, kitty, kitty," he says, and he shoots. And she screams and
Yeah.
starts to pull her out.
Yep.
Boom. Chapter 1.
Yeah, back to the beginning.
Back to the very beginning. So we see a couple pull up to a motel and flirt in a truck. No, it's the demon and a woman. The difference is this woman has red hair. So we're not quite sure what's going on at first. She does resemble the lady, but she has red hair. So we're not sure at first what her connection to the blonde woman is. But she and the man, who is clearly the demon, they flirt and they kiss. He asks if she wants to get a room. She teasingly tells him that she just wants to make out for a while. They flirt and drink beer, move on to whiskey. Still flirty, but a little tentative.
It's good banter though. Like they
It's
have really
very
good
good.
flirty energy. Like it's it feels very genuine.
And even there, she's in complete control. She's in control of the
Yeah.
conversation because he wants her more than she wants him at this point. So as they're getting closer to the idea of getting a room, she talks about being worried since she doesn't really know him, and a woman has to be on her guard in these situations when she's alone with a man for the first time. And we hear the question again that we heard at the opening of the movie. So I'm going to have to ask you a question. Are you a serial killer? He says no, and she gets a wicked smile and says, can we talk about all the things I want you to do to me?
Yeah.
As they're talking, in the car, we glimpse that he secretly has a pistol strapped to his ankle. We cut
And
to
we see the rifle in the back seat too.
Yes. And then we cut again to that opening image of him shirtless, choking someone. Only this time it's the exact same image. It's in color, and he's choking her in bed.
Right.
But this time when we changed angles, she's flat on her back. He's straddling her, choking her, and she says, harder. He keeps choking her, but he can't quite go far enough. She's not getting off. And she just tells him to stop. And she's cuffed to the bed. She just says, get these cuffs off me. She just seems disappointed and even a little disgusted that he wasn't able to get rough enough for her. But she's not that mad. They become flirtatious again.
Right.
And they make out a little bit more. And the only time she shuts him down is when he then reaches for a condom. And it's like, really, that's all you want? And at that point, he becomes angry. And he shoves her down, cuffs her again without her consent, and she tells him to stop.
Right.
This time he chokes and slaps her and makes him call her sir. And he says, I'm in control as she cries. He says, you're a sick woman carrying around shackles trying to get fucked. And we know at this moment that he is the killer.
Right. He's the monster.
He is the demon. And she, through her tears, says, Mr. Snuffleupagus. Boom.
Safe word.
The safe word. He immediately stops.
And this is how we know it was a scene.
That's how we know.
BDSM.
Yeah,
this was BDSM. It's sophisticated consent. It's a sophisticated form of consent in heavy play scenarios like this.
Exactly. So he unshackles her and apologizes, but her crying turns to laughing as she tells him that he was really good at scaring her.
Yeah.
And she just looks at him for a moment. And in that moment, she's kind of smiling at him, and then her look changes. Even the camera shot of her seems to waver a little bit. And that with that odd look that we only understand later when she explains to cops that one of the reasons she kills is that sometimes she doesn't see people, but devils.
She sees devils. Exactly.
And I think that subtle shift in the way she looks at him, that look she gives him is when she decides to kill him.
It's a flicker. Yeah.
It's a flicker. According to an interview, Willa Fitzgerald thinks that the lady is genuinely looking for a connection to people and begins having one with the demons, which is very interesting because it means the story could have gone a different way. But whatever the connection is there keeps getting severed. And when that happens, she turns from seeing him as a man that she kind of likes and will play games with her. Just suddenly he's another devil.
Right.
And then we cut again Chapter 4. We meet the friendly prepper family, Frederick and
Oh, is this
Genevieve.
the breakfast scene?
This is the breakfast scene with Frederick and
Oh my God.
Genevieve.
Their breakfast is so gross.
It's like a whole stick of butter and fried eggs
Oh,
and
oh.
sausage and pancakes cooked in the grease, and
Yeah. It it's this just giant pile of everything breakfast, and it's this
yes,
very strange moment because everything up to this point has been so tense and so just fraught with trying to get a breather from feeling so uncomfortable from the chase scene all the way through to, are is he or isn't he a serial killer? Are they doing a BDSM, or is this really something? Am I seeing abuse? Am I gonna have to, be like, fuck this film? But
yeah,
no, turns out it's BDSM. But still, you're just like, wow, that kind of had me.
absolutely. It's a great shift in tone, and
Yeah,
even the look. It's bright. It's sunny.
it's
Everything
someone's
is.
breakfast.
It's a happy couple, clearly in love and happy in their life together. After breakfast, they're sitting at the table making a puzzle together. A puzzle
Yeah.
of Scott Baio that they got at a swap
Oh
meet
God, that's right.
recently.
That's right.
And that's when the lady bangs on the door hysterically. So
Yeah.
they get some bear spray and they open the door a little bit frightened, and the lady collapses into their arms and they take her in. After they bandage her up in the kitchen, again, she's a blonde now. She's not a redhead anymore. So there's again that a
Right.
little bit of displacement of who the blonde is. We're pretty sure it's the lady, but it's
I could tell it
still
was her.
yeah, it's definitely her face, but it's still jarring. Why is she blonde?
Right.
Why is she completely different now? But the lady asks if they have a gun because she's being chased. Genevieve, the wife, wants her husband Frederick to call the police as she goes and gets pain medication for the lady. But the lady
Right.
says, no, 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 no cops. But the husband
Yeah, no
insists,
cops. She's
no
emphatic
cops.
about no cops.
The husband insists, and she asks again, no cops. When the wife comes downstairs, Frederick has a knife in his chest, and his head is bloody from where the lady cracked his skull open with the phone.
Yeah, this I did not see coming. Like that was up until that moment, I still thought that she was being pursued by a serial killer. And so
Absolutely.
everything about the way that the story was told in terms of it being out of sequence and the very deliberate choices around their sexual relationship and everything like that was just necessary for the payoff. Like, because that actually worked for me. And I was really surprised because I usually see through that stuff pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So I think it was just that the tension held me so tight throughout, and also just being distracted by the colors and the
Yeah.
music and everything. Just the way the entire film looked was just, I was swept into it. So when we come downstairs and we see Ed Begley Jr. and she's killed him, and you're just like, I oh wow, okay,
Yes.
what the fuck is going on now?
And that's what's great about this, what we're doing, because of the way we've set it up and our expectations of serial killers. We're sure it's him. We're sure it's the guy with the gun. It's not.
It always is.
It's
Yeah.
always the guy with the gun. It's always the abuser, quote unquote, the one who's
Right.
getting off strangling her. Nope, she is the killer,
Yeah.
and we really understand that now. And but the lady tells Genevieve that she's not going to kill her because she doesn't kill women. She doesn't say it, but we know we understand now. This is a code of hers. But she's not going to kill her, but she has to tie her up.
Yeah.
So Genevieve gets her to take her outside to the storm cellar where there are chains, where she says she can get chained up. But all the lady has is a knife. And so when they get outside, Genevieve just takes off through the woods.
She just books it.
She
Yeah.
just books it, and the lady's just sort of standing there going like, oh, well, I blew that. But then she,
Yeah.
then she sees the man in the distance, and runs back into the house, and that's when she gets into the kitchen freezer.
Right.
Boom. Now we're back to chapter 2. Back at the motel earlier in the evening. What the hell's
Yeah.
going on here? Now everything we're seeing is different. Everything is different now. Everything
Yeah.
at the motel has a different cast to it. She asks the guy, does he like to party? And she gets out cocaine and shows him, and she has to convince him a little, but he's really kind of into it at the same time. And she lays out a couple of really big lines. But we see that she takes the second line she lays out is from a different container. The cocaine
Oh, I
comes
didn't see that the first time.
the cocaine comes from a little plastic envelope, and the second line comes from a little glass jar. And so she takes it to him. She snorts up the coke and makes sure he snorts up the different powder. And they start making out again. Then she stops abruptly and begins to mock him. You know, maybe I lied about everything.
Yeah, she gets really ugly. Like there's this ugliness that comes over her demeanor where she's like making fun of the way he talks, almost like mocking someone for a stutter kind of a thing. Like it's really this mocking cruelty that
Yeah.
comes over her. And that for me is when I realized like everything changed. At
Everything
that
shifts.
point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he gets up and starts getting dressed. He's done with her. Completely
Yeah,
done with her.
Yeah, the date's over.
She goes into the bathroom as he dresses. And this is when we see her pull a knife and a taser from her backpack. By now, the demon, is completely high and wrecked because what she gave him was ketamine instead of coke.
Right.
And he is limped and screwed up and completely helpless. But to his credit, he makes it out of the room before he collapses. But
Yeah.
she just stalks out in her underwear and her red wig and her red docks and her underwear and just drags him back inside.
Yeah, great use of cherry red like throughout this entire film.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's such a signature of this film. It's fantastic.
She takes off his shirt while he's helpless and says, I didn't want to have to do this, man. I was just trying to have a good time.
Yeah.
This
Total serial killer shit.
This is where we realize that moment earlier was when she saw him as a devil. She really kind of wanted to have sex with him, but she had the devil vision, and everything changed. She takes off his shoe, shoves his sock in his mouth, and straddles him with a knife in her hand.
Yeah, this is where it gets really grisly. And
Yeah.
I kind of had to look away a little bit for this.
Well, fortunately, the film kind of looks away for you. As a slow, mournful version of the song Love Hurts plays on the radio, and the song recurs throughout the film, we see her on top of him.
Do you know the story with that song, with this film?
It's just the emblematic of her relationship.
It's so Z Berg was a lead singer in a band called The Like, and Z Berg wrote an entire album for this movie. And the in that segment, it's actually JT Malner's mom singing some of it.
It's beautiful.
Oh my God, right?
It's absolutely
when I read
beautiful.
that, I was like, what? That's so twisted. I love it.
Absolutely. So the lady climbs up on him while he's helpless, tasers him, starts cutting him up. We don't see all the torture. We just see her on top of him from the back. But we know absolutely what's going on. And there's actually sort of a countdown of like 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and it goes on for several minutes. And then we cut to later where the lady is in the bathroom wiping blood off her hands with a towel. She takes off her red wig. Now we see her blonde hair finally. She just kind of takes a big breath and relaxes. This is where she confirms that she is the blonde that's being chased by him. She's stolen his phone, looks
It's
at
a
it.
great scene, like
It's
acting wise too, because nothing is said.
mm-hmm.
And she's just like, you see her processing what
Yep.
she's doing.
Yep.
Like, she has this great relationship with the camera where it's like, you don't need the dialogue.
Nope. And it's a ritual. You can tell it's a ritual at this point. She's done.
Yeah.
She's had her fun. So now she goes to check on who this guy actually is. So she
Right.
looks at his phone, isn't interested, drops it in the toilet. Checks his wallet, takes out the cash, flips through it, and sees a cop badge.
Yep. That look on her face is so good when she sees that too.
Mm-hmm. Kind of an oh hell, what am I into? And
Of course. Yeah.
and kind of oh, this is kind of cool, I think. She goes back into the bedroom where he's still on the bed, and we see she's carved ELLE in the demon's chest for her serial killer nickname, the Electric Lady. This is where she wants to end the scene. There's no more safe words. The scene is over. She climbs on top of him, takes the knife, and is just about to stab him in the throat and kill him, when he puts up his arm and the small pistol we saw on his ankle earlier is in his hand, and he shoots, hitting her in the side of the head and her ear.
That's when her ear injury happened.
That's when her ear injury happens, exactly. He's still very stoned, so when he keeps shooting, but he misses her, and she's able to run away.
Oh, he's wasted.
She's running out of the motel, running through the parking lot in her underwear, playing the victim. A small woman screaming with blood streaming down her face.
Well, and she came out and like the guy next door leaned out, remember?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And she was like, "Help me, he's got a gun." And the guy says, "I got a gun too."
That's right. So she's
and that's JT Malner's dad, by the way.
that's great.
Yeah.
So she's already established herself as a victim with that witness, the guy with the gun. So
yeah.
she's really doing a good job. She's been through this before. She knows what to do. So the demon manages to crawl from the bed, gets to the cocaine, and starts snorting it madly to revive himself, to get past the ketamine high. He's trying to get back on his feet so he can go after her. In the motel office, the motel manager, she gets the woman to lock the front door. Again, still playing the victim. But the hotel manager, a woman, insists on calling the police. And the lady has no choice. She stabs her in the throat and kills her. She doesn't want to hurt women, but this one got in her way. And then she steals another woman's clothes and her car and speeds away. This is where she gets the red Pinto and the basically hospital scrubs she's wearing for the rest of the movie.
Cherry red.
Cherry red again. Everything's in reds. As she takes off, we cut to chapter 6. The next to last chapter. So she's lying in the freezer with the demon standing over her in the rifle. He cuffs the lady. The lady is still alive, and he cuffs her hand to the freezer handle.
Mm-hmm.
But he knows he's screwed. He had sex with this woman. He's full of drugs.
Well, they didn't have sex, but he did have a hookup.
They did have a hookup.
They had some consensual BDSM.
Which she can say was not consensual. So he knows.
Oh, totally.
He's in a lot of trouble here.
And this is where she starts acting. Like, oh no, I'm so scared. Oh, I thought, like you can see like the pathology in her just kicks in. the desperation of, I'm going to act like I'm scared, it's not my fault. They made me like this or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
you can see her
Well,
start to go through all of that with him, where she's trying to manipulate him.
yeah. He says, I got you. But she taunts him because he won't kill her. And then kind of sing song, you're going to be in trouble. And she says she loved him when he had his hand around her throat. It was a moment of true love.
Mm-hmm.
Did you feel it from me, she says. And starts singing Love Hurts Again. And starts
Right.
crying. Now we have to ask, is this her? Is this an act to get him to let
Right.
down his guard? In fact, whatever it is, he does relax a little. And she shoots him right in the face with the bear spray that Genevieve had been
Right.
holding
Right.
earlier. He lunges and grabs her, and they wrestle for a moment. She's still in the freezer, half in the freezer, handcuffed to it. They're wrestling, and she leans in and she just rips out the side of his throat with her teeth.
Yeah.
And he falls over, bleeding uncontrollably from his throat.
It's a crazy struggle. It's like so intense.
He can't believe what's happened. She got him. She got him again. And she crawls out of the freezer and steals his ankle pistol, puts it in her. She has a jacket at this point. She stole the husband Frederick's leather biker jacket, puts it in the pocket. She starts hearing the cops arrive because the demon had
It's
called.
agonizing though, like watching her do this, because she's
Yes,
chained to the freezer and she's in pain because she's been shot.
she's been shot in
And
the shoulder.
she's like howling while she's trying to figure out like where the handcuff keys are,
Mm-hmm.
and trying to like get herself out of that situation. But yeah, that's when she starts hearing the cops arrive, basically.
And so she knows she can't get free. So what she does is she pulls her pants down to make it look like an
Mm-hmm.
assault, and like she's the victim, and starts crying uncontrollably.
Mm-hmm.
The other cops come in, a man and a woman. We don't know their names. The woman cop is sympathetic to her and takes off the cuff, even though Pete, the guy cop, is suspicious of the scene.
Mm-hmm.
He insists that they keep everything the way it is and wait for the EMTs to arrive. The woman cop is furious and says
Mm-hmm.
they have to take her to the hospital right now because she has a gunshot wound in her shoulder. And again, it looks like she's been sexually assaulted.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, the lady knows that she has the upper hand. She starts faking convulsions.
Mm-hmm.
So they put her in the cop car, and they start driving. They start driving to the hospital. Pete is the one driving. The woman cop is in the front seat, kind of talking to her. It's like, it's going to be okay. We're going to get you. We're going to get you soon. We're going to get you to the hospital. You'll be fine. Off out of the woods comes Genevieve, running, screaming up to the cop car, trying to say, this woman broke into our house and she killed my husband and she's crazy. And just when she starts trying to explain things to her, the lady shoots her in the head with the demon's handgun.
It surprises both cops.
It surprises everybody.
Yeah.
The lady, now in control of the situation, tells the cops to give her their guns. So now she has 3 guns. But again, she's reluctant to kill a woman. So she tells the woman cop to get out of the car and to run into the woods. And very reluctantly, she does it.
Mm-hmm.
Boom. Epilogue card. We're at the end finally. The lady and Pete sit in the stopped car, and he asks her, are you really the electric lady? And why did you kill all these folks? That's when she explains, sometimes I don't see people, I just see devils. And we go to the outside of the car and we hear a gunshot and we see blood on the window.
I'm going to interrupt you because on rewatch, I saw something else.
Oh, yeah?
She says, I don't see people, I see devils. And there's a moment of exchange between them when they look at each other. And she looks at herself in the rearview mirror, and for a split second, we see a devil.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. She knows who she is. She knows who she
Yeah.
is. And then she shoots Pete, gets out of the car. Now she has her gun and 2 cop guns in her pockets.
It's almost an off-screen kill, too.
It is. I mean, we're actually outside the car. We just see we hear the shot. We see the blood hit the windows. There's nothing sexy about it. It's a very simple execution. She gets out of the car. She gets out of the car, walks a few feet away, with her good hand, pulls out a pack of cigarettes, lights it, and starts walking. Now, is this just her relaxing after an exhausting moment, or is this after a kill? Is this sort of like the post-coital cigarette after a series of kills? We don't know. That's open to interpretation. But she walks down the road, still bleeding from the ear, bleeding from her shoulder. And when she sees a truck coming, she waves to it and again collapses in the road, the way she collapsed into the arms of the Prepper family, playing a victim again.
Mm-hmm.
A woman comes out, very sympathetic and worried about her, helps load her into the front seat of her pickup truck. The lady plays helpless and sits there, just bleeding. And again, she looks at herself in the mirror, the rearview mirror, and sees herself. Again, there's no devil this time. It's just her staring at herself and the mess she's become.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, she has to get out of this situation, and there's a woman in the way. She doesn't like it, but she slowly pulls out one of the cop guns. But she's hesitating. And the trucker lady realizes what she's doing, quickly whips out her own gun and shoots her and calls 911. The lady sputters, slowly closing her eyes as they continue to drive, slumps in her seat, and the scene slowly turns back to black and white, just like the opening, as she sits, breathes, and apparently very quietly dies. And that's the end of the lady's story.
It's a beautiful, beautiful scene, and it has as much tension as the action scenes. Watching
Absolutely.
her fade out, because it's just the camera is on her face for the entire segment, and her face goes through a range of expressions, and each time I've watched them, I've seen something different.
Yes.
But I think that what I see is surprise and respect and sadness and
All those.
wanting to fight, but also kind of amusement as well. And it's just it's a hell of a scene. It's really amazing.
And I think there's a kind of letting go she does. I think she realizes she's come as far as she could. She's done as well as she ever could. And I think in a weird way, if she was going to get killed, it's better that it was a woman than a man.
Right, right. Yeah, it's an incredible film. It just played here in Wellington, out of New Zealand, for
Hmm.
the Terrify Film Fest, and everyone that I talked to loved it. Like loved it, loved it, loved it. Just I ran into even just like this cute little old lady coming out of the film festival, and she was just like, somehow it came up in conversation outside the theater, and she was like, has everyone here seen it? And when she found out that someone in the group of people that I was in talking about the film hadn't seen it, she was like, oh, I'm not going to spoil it for you, and she
Ah,
walked away. I was like, aw.
excellent. That's
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it was the festival closer here for the Terrify Film Festival, and
perfect film.
very it yeah, it opened with Heretic and it closed with Strange Darling, and it was like, yeah, those are definitely among the best horror films of the year for sure.
What great bookends. So different, both
Right?
very powerful. Very powerful.
Incredible. I thought it was interesting when I was reading about Strange Darling. I you may know this, but I didn't. JT Mulner, apparently, like, him and his family run haunted houses,
Oh, I
like
missed that.
Halloween. Yeah, they run haunted houses, and they have for decades apparently. And they don't do, like, for their characters for their haunted houses, they don't do Jason's or, like any of the typical, like haunted house characters.
Hmm.
He writes all the characters, like all of their characters for their haunted houses are original characters.
Perfect. Beautiful.
Right? I'm like, where can I
Beautiful.
go to your where are these? I want to go to
Yes.
these.
Absolutely. And I
Oh,
mean, from seeing this film, it's going to be beautiful. It's just going to be, it's going to be high quality, scary stuff.
yeah, there's going to be something else going on with it rather than
Yeah.
just a boo jump scare.
Yeah. 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 Definitely. I really love this. This is one of my favorite horror films of the year. And
Yeah, me too. Me too. It's definitely, it's not my top one, but it's up there for
yeah,
sure.
yeah. It's 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 one of the most original. I'm tired of the Tarantino comparisons.
Yeah, me too. It's
Um,
superficial, like The Sopranos and The Penguin.
yes,
It's sort of like, okay, if that's I mean, maybe that's the baseline someone can relate to with that, but
right. But I mean,
these are much more constructed things.
yeah.
They're just different. They're different.
Also, Tarantino did not invent telling stories out of order. This is a French trick, and that's where
Yeah.
Tarantino got it from the French. Americans think he's magic and invented it. He's not.
I know.
I'm a Pulp Fiction fan. I'm a Tarantino fan.
Same.
But
Same.
but don't give him that credit.
Right,
Don't give him the
exactly.
credit that the French came up with.
Yeah. All right. Well, so we have covered The Penguin and we have covered Strange Darling. Let's move to our next segment, which is anything coming up? Any films or TV? Are we reading any good horror or are we in a book lull? Like, what's going on here? I've got a couple things that I'm looking forward to, for sure. I've got so the teaser for Yellow Jacket season 3 dropped
Yes,
today.
I just heard
And,
about that.
oh, and it's coming out on Valentine's Day next year.
Perfect.
I'm like, you guys. Oh my God. That show's so great. I love that show so much. Another thing I saw is the director of Train to Busan
Hmm.
is doing a new film, and I didn't even know that. But apparently, the trailer for that came out as well. It's called Revelations, and while
Nice.
I'm not in the mood for more religious horror, I hope it's not religious horror. It sounds more like a cop story,
Okay.
but I anything by Yan Sang Ho I'm interested in. So
Absolutely.
I'm like, all right, fine, sign me up. And then the third thing I'm looking forward to is Onslaught. And you've probably heard of this one.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. It's a new Adam Wingard that's coming out. It's written by the guest Simon Barrett, which I
Hmm.
loved the guest. And like The Guest, it also stars Dan Stevens, he's become one of my horror favorites, actually. He was incredible in Cuckoo. He was great in Abigail. Oh my God. I would even
Yes.
argue that he was in Legion, and I would argue that Legion is like superhero horror for sure. But it's a gonzo action horror thriller, and I'm really excited for it. Dan Stevens is playing a German scientist again, like he did in
Again.
Cuckoo, which
Again.
I'm just like, I know, right? Okay, typecasting, maybe, I don't
Yeah.
know, but yeah, I'm really excited about that. Like, I'm anything at this point too with Dan Stevens doing horror. I'm like, all right, fine, let's do this.
Definitely. Definitely. The
What about you? You got anything?
Nosferatu coming out this Christmas.
Oh, that's right. Oh God, Christmas. Yeah.
I'll be in a movie theater. Maybe not Christmas Day. I don't want to go with everybody and their
No.
mom and their friends and their kids and their moms
And all their COVID.
and
Yeah, no.
all their COVID. I'm gonna
No thanks.
do my usual trick of just going to a matinee in the middle of the week all by myself.
Yes. Yes. Perfect.
But I'm really looking forward to this. Like the cast is amazing. Eggers is crazy. I've deliberately stayed away from stills and trailers and all that stuff because I want it
Me
to all
too.
hit at once. The only thing I've seen is this wonderful photo of Willem Dafoe standing, laughing in the middle of a burning room.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a great image,
Interesting.
and that's all
Cool.
all I know about it.
Okay.
So
Yeah, I've seen just the most minimal bits of information about it because I for someone who does a podcast with spoilers, I am allergic to spoilers for
yes,
myself. So,
absolutely, absolutely. I'm excited because I just recently rewatched Herzog's Nosferatu, which is a film I love. The one
oh, nice.
with Klaus
With
Kinski.
Klaus Kinski. Yeah, it's
Yes,
gorgeous.
such a beautiful film. So
Oh,
I'm,
absolutely. It's so pretty.
and I know this one. I know this one will be quite different. So it will be great to have both of those available at the same time.
Oh, yeah.
And
All right.
that's about it. I mean, I have some books.
Oh, what books?
How about, well, since we're talking about the Penguin and crime horror, I have A Mask of Flies by Matthew Lyons,
Ooh,
Lyons.
okay.
And just to give you a real quick thumbnail, I don't want to give away too much. After a bank robbery gone bad, Anne Heller, a friend and a cop they're holding prisoner, go on the run and they hide in her family's remote cabin. While
Ooh,
hiding
okay.
there, while hiding there, they discover secrets, very dark secrets of Anne's family. And worse, they discover that at the cabin, dead things don't always stay dead.
Oh, that sounds fantastic.
And that's all I'm going to say about it. It's a
I,
terrific read.
oh my God. Okay. I'm gonna pick that one up because I definitely need a new horror book for sure.
Great, great.
I just read S.A. Barnes' Dead Silence and also S.A. Barnes' Ghost Station, and it got me completely addicted to sci-fi horror. And I read The Scourge Between Stars by Ness Brown. I just like devoured it, but I haven't been able to find anything since. So, and well, that doesn't sound like space horror. It sounds like something I'm absolutely gonna love anyway. So,
I think you might like it. I mean, I know you love Jim Thompson and Hammett and all that
I
whole
do.
crowd. So
Yep.
yeah,
James Elroy. Yeah.
James
Read
Elroy,
all of it.
absolutely.
Faves. Total faves.
Uh,
Okay.
I I
So,
have I have
oh,
another. Oh, I have one more book.
oh, sorry. Go ahead.
It is called Horror for Weenies by Emily C. Hughes. And what it is everything you need to know about the films you're too scared to watch. It's a primer for people new to horror. Um, it
Aw.
it lists terrific horror movies, It
Really?
goes through the plots, and then it gives you like not an essay, but it really kind of puts the film into kind of a cultural context. And
Cool.
it starts with early stuff like Psycho, Night of the Living Dead, and Rosemary's Baby.
Oh, classics.
Jumps up to the 80s and 90s, The Shining, Poltergeist, Nightmare on Elm Street.
Oh,
Then
it's
we
all classics.
all classic
Cool.
stuff. Then we gets closer. Then we jump to the 2000s with The Ring, 28 Days Later, Saw, The Conjuring, The Babadook. There are a ton more films
Oh,
that I'm
nice.
listing. That's just some examples. I think this is a really nicely done book, even for people who know these films. The way she writes about them is really insightful, I think. And so I
Cool.
think this is be a good addition for anybody who enjoys films, but especially newcomers and people who might be a little afraid to engage with some movies because of what they've heard
Right.
about them.
Well, it sounds like a good gift book. And
Absolutely.
it sounds like a good book to give someone like people who are like there's always like the person who's dating the person that isn't into horror.
Yes.
It's like that's the book that you give the person that isn't into horror that is dating someone who is into
Yes.
horror. So,
Perfect.
yeah, so you can at least like start to have those conversations. All right, so the last thing I have for us before we go is what did we learn today from the Penguin and what did we learn today from Strange Darling?
Well,
So,
for me, what I learned from the Penguin is Heraclitus. Character is fate.
wow.
That's what I thought watching that show.
Damn. Okay.
How about you?
What did I learn from the Penguin? Oh my God. Don't like characters. Just don't like them. Don't ever find a character that you like because they're just going to be there because they're just like people. It's so messed up. Characters are just like people. It sucks. But also from the Penguin, I learned that actually like that I like crime horror
Hmm.
and also that like there's a little pocket world like there's a little the Batman pocket world that I actually am obsessed with now. Like I'm really into it.
Oh,
And I
that's great.
wasn't a huge crazy Batman person. And I'm still not, but this is different. So,
Hmm.
yeah. Oh yeah. Also just oh god. Oz Cobb is just terrible. And I can't wait to see more of him. I hate that. It's so weird.
Hmm. He's you don't have sympathy for him, but you're fascinated. It's the Walter White thing. He's a horrible,
Yeah.
horrible, relentlessly terrible person, but you can never look away.
Yeah. I feel like they set us up in the first episode too. There's this one moment where Oz says to Vic in his car, he's like, yeah, have you smelled my air freshener? Check this out. It's
Yes.
Aqua Paradise. And I'm like,
Yes.
oh my God. Okay.
I
We
love
get it.
that.
We get it, Penguin. All right. And what did I learn from Strange Darling? Wow. Just, I already didn't pick up hitchhikers before, but don't pick up cute ones at all. Like, just don't.
Yes. And I learned to always check the lines people lay out for you.
Damn.
Don't let
Right?
anyone lay out a line for you with their back to you.
Oh my God. Seriously.
Yep.
All right. Well, this has been a great episode. We finally got to talk about some things that have been obsessing us. I hope everyone else enjoyed it too. Thank you for processing Vic's death with us. We've been going through some stuff with that one. But thank you all for joining us on Raised by Horror. Until our next episode, find us on iTunes, YouTube, Spotify, and raisedbyhorror.com. You can find Richard Cadry at richardcadry.com, Violet Blue at violetblue.com, and us at all the usual social sites. Now go stab those subscribe buttons and stay out of the woods at night.
Oops, can I add one more thing?
Yeah.
I just changed my my homepage. It's richardcadry.me, which sounds much more egotistical, but
Oh my God.
It's
That's awesome.
I lost the. This is a long story why I don't have that other site anymore. But it's
Okay.
richardcadry.me.
All right. Well, anyway, go stab that subscribe button. We'll see you next time.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.